I need a new project. For this video, I'm going to challenge myself to start a new art project only using things that I already have, which means that I'm not going to be spending any money for this project. That's right, it is a $0 art project. Let's begin. As you can see, I have a pretty good amount of art supplies and craft supplies and miscellaneous things that I could use for this, but I still have no idea what I'm going to be making, so it's time to brainstorm. Typically when I'm looking for art inspiration, I either watch art YouTubers or scroll Pinterest, and that obviously can take a pretty long time. Sometimes I don't find anything, but other times... Okay, I love this idea, and I think I have everything I need to make it, but I need to figure out how to execute it before I begin. Back to the drawing board. Oh, sorry, Ming. These vine fairy lights are going to be the cutest addition to my wall. I had these dead Christmas fairy lights up here for a while. I just haven't replaced them, and I've been into more nature and the color green lately, so this is the perfect opportunity to make some DIY vine fairy lights out of paper. I've thought about putting either real or fake vine up somehow instead of these lights. I just don't like the look of the plastic looking vines or even plastic vine lights, so why not make my own with things I already have? One of the first things I needed to figure out for this project was the shapes of the vines that I want to create, so I'm going to use a different sheet of paper for the template of the shapes. I'm just trying out a couple of shapes, and I'm also leaving a little tail at the end of the leaf because that's what I'm going to use to wrap around the wiring, and I'm going to cut these out and use these as a template and then pick a green color out of these two green colors that I have and just try to draw all of them out. I think this took like 2 to 3 sheets of this like 6-inch green paper to make all of the vines. The like fairy lights that I'm using to make these vine lights was either 9 or 12 feet long. It was extremely long, so instead of using that length, I twisted it onto itself, if that makes sense. You can see it's kind of it kind of looks like a braid almost, and I spent like 2 hours twisting that because it's just so long and it kept tangling on itself. And if I had used the original length, it would have been really difficult to set it up by myself, and I would have needed a lot of little leaves. And I'm going to show you how I put it together, and I actually only used glue. I didn't really need anything fancy, and I was certain that this would work because it's just gluing paper onto itself. So let me show you how to do this. For all of the leaves, I kind of folded them in half a little bit so that there's a little bit of depth to the leaves, and I put a little bit of glue on the tail on the back of it, and I just folded it over a piece of the wire and just held onto it so that the glue would hold on, and just made sure that it was really on there. I really like pressed my thumbnail into like the corner of it so that it really stays on there, and it actually worked pretty well. I mean, my hands were very sticky with glue at the end of this because I was just using a little bit too much glue at some points, just covered my fingers in glue. So let me show you one more time. I am putting glue on the little tail that we drew and getting that around the wire and just pressing and holding onto it for a while just so it doesn't slide off. And I chose a couple of gaps in between the lights so that they weren't like on top of the actual lights. I also made sure to use the variants of leaves that I had. I drew a couple of different shapes, as you can see. So I have a really small one and like 2 like medium sizes, and I made sure to like use kind of every other shape so that it wasn't all the same shape throughout, so there was a little bit of variation. And yeah, this was actually a lot easier than I thought. I'm so glad I decided to do this, even though cutting it out took a while, but putting it together was a lot more fun than that. I honestly think it looks a lot better than any plastic one that I would have bought instead of making it my own. And it was so fun and so cool and surprisingly so easy. And I'm just gonna wrap it around myself and I'm gonna take down my old lights and put them back up. I had these command strip like light hooks that you can put up, and they're clear so you can barely see them. So I just took those down and put my new fairy lights on there, and had to be pretty careful so I didn't bend the paper too much because it's very kind of tight, and I just want to be really careful because it is fragile. It's made out of paper, so I had to be a little bit careful placing them, and it just looks so cool. Here's how it looks with the lights on, and I'm so proud of myself. It's so fun to make, like I said, and let's go on to part 2 of this project. In my mini sketchbook tour video, I kind of hinted that I had a secret project of some drawings in here, and I'm finally going to reveal what those are. I wanted to make some wall art out of clay, and these were the designs that I had in mind, and looking at these again, there's so many that I could choose from, but I think I really like the clover and ladybug drawings, so let's make them out of air dry clay, and I'm using creative paper clay. It is so light and it feels like paper. You don't need that much water while making it. I keep it in this resealable bag, and I'm just going to grab a chunk, start with the ladybug, and I am going to make it like a round like bean like shape, and I'm going to use this little knife tool here to outline that, like the top of the head part, and also going to draw a line straight down the middle for the wings and just sort of keep shaping it. And I'm not actually going to put this one up on my wall. I decided to, since it's so round, I decided to make this into a worry stone. And if you don't know what those are, they are like smooth gem-like stones that is made to have like this sort of indent to like, so you can rub your thumb in there, and it's just to like help you calm down if you're feeling anxious or if you're upset. It's just something to have in your hand to like take your mind off of whatever is going on, and it's just fun to like touch something that's extremely soft and smooth. And I had one when I was a kid, and I just probably misplaced it, and I thought, since, you know, I'm an anxious girly, I thought I'd make one for myself and make it into a really cool little ladybug. And the next shape that I'm gonna make is the clover, so I flattened out some clay and just drew the shape. I want these next pieces to be flat so they can hang them up on my wall, and after I drew that shape, I just cut it out with that knife tool again and just peeled it right out, and I smoothed out the edges, and I also repeated that process and sort of glued them together with some more wet clay just because it was too thin, the first shape. So I thickened that out right after I drew these little lines here, and then I got started on the butterfly, which was basically the same exact process for this, drawing the shape and then cutting it out and then sort of building on it a little bit. And this technique I'm doing here is called scoring. It's typically used in pottery, but it applies also with clay. It is basically just sort of scratching on the surface that you want to add on and using what's called a slip, which is wet clay, and just putting the pieces together. You're basically creating a glue-like surface for the rest of the clay, and it just very easily bonds to itself. And I'm using this tool again to just like blend that clay together, and to complete that I just fixed up on the lines for the wings and let them dry for a couple of days. Now we're back with these dry pieces. You'll know when they're completely dry when they are bright white. There will be like sort of a grayness of moisture, and just wait till that completely disappears. And also you can sort of tap it against the surface to see if it's hard and solid. And yeah, these are completely dry, and I'm going to begin with sanding them. This not only helps for the paint application, but also helps smooth any roughness from the clay textures. And I'm also using thick, triple thick gloss, and I have some paint ready to paint these guys. Using that little piece of sandpaper to get in the grooves, and I'm also rubbing it against it on its back so that the back is completely flat, and just repeating that process for the rest of these. I'm also using a fan brush that I never use to just brush off any sanded clay so that it's not all into the paint, and it just messes with the paint texture. And now these are clean and ready to paint. I'm going to start with the clover, and I'm going to work a lot of back to back, so I'll be painting while one dries, and then the same with the third one, and then going back to the first one, since by the time I'm done painting the third one, the first one is dry. So it's a lot of back and forth with painting these, and I also don't want to get paint all over my fingers, even though that happens anyway. That's why I only paint like a part of it so that I can still hold it. And if your skin or anything is pressing against the wet paint, it peels off anyway. So you got to be careful when painting these, which is why I have them leaning on the little wet paper towel so that it doesn't like peel off. And painting the beautiful little details on this 4-leaf clover. I am painting a white clover, and they are one of the most common clovers. You'll probably see them in the grass, and you might also recognize the flowers. You just probably didn't know that they were clovers. I learned this recently as I just started getting into deep dive on clovers. The white clovers are the ones that have these little white marks on the leaves, and they're probably one of my favorite ones. And they're just the ones that I see the most, especially on my Pinterest feed. That's why I draw them so much. But I also gotten into picking them in the grass and drying them and framing them. So I have a bunch of them in a couple little frames. And the most common ones that I have in my yard, it has been the white clover ones that you just saw me paint. And I also see the yellow wood sorrel ones, which are the yellow flowered ones. And then just like I said, going back to painting the other ones, and this butterfly is going to be blues, dark blues, and a little bit of yellow. I do not know the butterfly name. I'll put it up on screen once I look it up again, but it's just another like beautiful butterfly that I saw. I picked this specific like colored butterfly because I don't have a lot of blue in my space, so I wanted to change it up. I didn't want to do like a monarch butterfly or rose moth or a luna moth. I wanted to do something different, so I picked this cool like dark blue butterfly and just painted it almost exactly to the picture. I messed up a couple times because the reference I was looking at, the butterfly was sideways, or moth, I'm not sure. It was sideways, so yeah. And I'm using this hot blue. If there was a hot blue, like hot pink, this would be that gorgeous color. And then I'm finishing the butterfly off with a little bit of white squiggles for like the edges of the wings. And then going back to the ladybug to add a little bit of detail so that these little spots on the wings and on the head, and just adding a little bit of muddy brown redness to just add some depth so it's not like one solid color, make it a little different, make it look interesting. And I also did stars instead of round shapes for those little spots that ladybugs have. And then finishing off with glossing them, but you got to make sure that the paint is completely dry so that you don't get colored gloss everywhere, and glossing them and letting those dry. So this was such a fun and challenging little art project, and the coolest part is that it was completely free. If by the end of this video you decide to recreate the things I did, I'm going to put a number on the screen of how much everything cost. I don't think this is a very expensive art project if you didn't have all of these things, but luckily I did, and I wanted to use the tools that I already had and make something cool, and that's what we did today. And let me show you the little clay things that I made too, because I do want to put them up on my wall. The first thing we made was the ladybug worry stone. I do find myself like grabbing it and rubbing the center because that's what it's made for, and it's so smooth and relaxing, which is why worry stones / smooth stones are a really cool thing to have, especially if you have anxiety. Here it is up close. And I added stars on the back of all of them, so it's sort of like a little signature. The butterfly. So I am thinking butterfly here and clover here next to these prints that I have. And as I'm standing here, I just got like a flashback of when I hung up this, and I dropped it and completely chipped it. I'll see if I can find that clip again, but I was devastated. Using command strips to hang this up. I just had to trim this one. These are the same size though. Okay, I'm just gonna place it. And I also just realized that I'm completely covered the like cute star that I did, but oh well. Cool. Right here. Yeah. Wow. What a cute like tiny addition. And throughout this video, you probably noticed some new animations. I worked on them off camera, but I had a lot of fun making them. And like every year or so, I sort of revamp my animation and YouTube like banner thing. So yeah, like I mentioned before, I've been into green and like nature and obviously clovers, as you guys know. So I just completely did like clover themed and like green, like a new animation. So I hope you like them because I really love them and had a lot of fun making them. And before we go, I'd like to take in a moment to mention my Patreon. If you don't know, I have a Patreon page, and every month I make digital rewards, so join my wallpaper club. Awkward neighbors started mowing right outside my window, but here is the desktop wallpaper and the 2 phone wallpapers that I made. Also included in the bundle are folder icons. You can get this entire bundle and monthly podcast and other exclusive content all just for $10. Link is in the description as always. Please enjoy these fruit-themed wallpapers. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!